Alright, hey there guys, Adrian DeCosta here, aka JediBro95, coming at you guys with another video. In this video is going to be something that I noticed today in the NBA community, on the NBA basically, and think of this as an NBA discussion video. I will have another one coming out tomorrow about Jimmy Butler's, people talking about why Jimmy Butler should be take how people should be holding Jimmy Butler's finals loss in the same way as LeBron, and I'll touch on how stupid that is. But in this video, I want to talk about the fact that Darryl Morey was now hired as the Philadelphia 76ers general manager or vice president of basketball operations, whatever the fuck it's called. And my reaction to it, I I don't like this move for the Philadelphia 76ers. And it's not the fact that I think the concept of Morey Ball is a flawed one. Don't get me wrong, I do believe the concept of Morey Ball is flawed, and it is one of those things that, has proven to not be very successful. Like at its peak, it was a conference finals appearance with losing in 7 games. And although people want to say that, if Chris Paul was healthy, they would have went to the finals, like that may be true, but the reality is injuries are injuries. You cannot just look past injuries. It happens. But, and then over the last couple of seasons, the concept of Morey Ball has given a second round exit to the latter half of the Houston Rockets Morey Ball era. So I like, on one hand, don't get me wrong, it's good. It's a good concept, layups and threes, to cut out mid-range and all that shit. I get that, okay? Because those are the two most efficient shots in the NBA. And nobody could ever dispute that because it's just a fact. However, when you have a system that is so heavily reliant on those types of shots, and you have a system that doesn't make adjustments rather than just keep shooting, it's really not going to be something that is going to be viable. Now, granted, to their credit, the Sixers have a much more flexible roster on their hand than the Houston Rockets did last year. I would argue that the Houston Rockets roster was one of the more one-dimensional rosters in recent NBA history, just because it was literally just a couple of ball handlers and a bunch of shooters. There was no versatility, there was no variety in the things that they could do. It was literally just that. However, the Sixers have that flexibility. Like, if the pick and roll isn't working for Ben Simmons, you can get Embiid some post touches, you can run some pick and pops with Al Horford, you can get Tobias Harris involved and shit like that. However, the other parts of the roster that need to be talked about is the fact that, well, one, Ben Simmons cannot shoot. He just refuses to shoot three-point shots. And honestly, this is probably the best way or the best solution for this Morey Ball from Darryl Morey coming to the Sixers is to get Ben Simmons to shoot a hell of a lot more three-point shots than he has over recent years. And yeah, to their credit, if Ben Simmons starts knocking down his three-point shots, then we can revisit this conversation about this being a bad decision and how this was definitely one of the worst decisions. Not one of the worst decisions, but one of the weirder decisions I've seen from a team this offseason. However, but because of that caveat and it being right now, with Ben Simmons just refusing to take an outside shot, not even a mid-range, it really does give me Russell Westbrook vibes. Like, it really doesn't help when your lead ball handler and lead guard just cannot hit shots for shit outside of 2 feet. And yeah, Russell Westbrook is a better mid-range shooter than Ben Simmons is, but the thing is also is like, it's very well known that Darryl Morey avoids the mid-range shot. Like, the mid-range shot is something that he does not like. And granted, yes, Chris Paul could get away with it too, but Chris Paul was and still is a lethal mid-range assassin who was knocking down, I think, if I remember correctly, it was like 57% of his mid-range shots, which is pretty fucking great for a shot that is deemed the least efficient shot in basketball. However, yeah, that's one of the reasons Chris Paul was able to get away with it. But also at the same time, I'm pretty sure Darryl Morey was sitting there screaming like, yeah, when he was seeing Chris Paul take those shots. Now, the other option is the other part of this caveat is not outside of Ben Simmons, is Joel Embiid. Now, Joel Embiid, definitely one of the best big men in the NBA. I would say the second best center in the league, obviously behind Nikola Jokic. However, Joel Embiid is a terrible outside shooter as well, and not more specifically from the three-point line. Joel Embiid is a good mid-range shooter. You can have him step out to the 15, 17, 20-foot line, depending on where he is, and you can definitely get some production out of him in the pick and pop from mid-range. However, when it gets to behind the arc, Joel Embiid is just not great at that. Okay, now granted, it is something that he can work on, and it is something that you can get from him, but with Darryl Morey's system, you need to be consistent from behind the arc, and I don't see the offensive 3-point consistency raising from the Sixers in, especially Embiid, in like one season. I don't see 1 year he magically becomes a fucking one of the best mid 3-point shooters of the big man position. Now, obviously there are some more caveats there, but I want to just talk about those two and just think like just I just don't understand those how I don't like the fact that this is a thing because of these two players. Now the other option is definitely trading some players, and granted, yes, that could be where this is gonna go. If you trade off Joel Embiid for some young shooters and some good ball handling scorers, I could definitely see this happening. But also, like, again, Ben Simmons is a bad 3-point shooter, or just a refusal to take a 3-point shot type of player. So you can't have that, because we literally saw it. We've literally seen with the Houston Rockets where they just put a bunch of shooters around Russell Westbrook and James Harden, and that still only led to a second round out. And even the Milwaukee Bucks this season, they put a bunch of shooters around Giannis, and they were at a second round out this season because both men are terrible 3-point shooters. So you can't have a situation to where your lead ball handler is a terrible 3-point shooter. You can't have that in today's NBA anymore. You probably could get away with it in the early 2000s, maybe even the mid 2000s if you were lucky. But in today's NBA, you cannot have that. Like, it's just completely, not a viable strategy. So the other part of it could be trading trading Ben Simmons for some floor spacers and shit like that. However, the reality is also, if you put your offensive system around Joel Embiid, majority of the time, Joel Embiid is not even going to be able to play that much. Because Joel Embiid is consistently an injury-prone player. And, yeah, sure, Joel Embiid might be a fantastic overall big. He might be a great rim protector and a very good rebounder. But the reality is he's injury-prone. He's not very healthy per se. Like, you can get 60 plus games out of him, but the reality is also 60 games in the NBA, that's not much, especially when you're building your entire team around this person. Now, also you do have Tobias Harris, but Tobias Harris is one of those players that thrives in shot creation on the perimeter in the mid-range. And with this addition, you're probably going to make Tobias Harris just a spot-up 3-point shooter again, which is unfair to him because granted, he can do that, but he's not that type of player. Like, he's not like a Brook Lopez or a Dalilo Gallinari or even a Kristaps Porzingis even. He's not that type of player. He is a shot creator with the ball in his hands type of guy who can give you some productivity behind the line. However, if you just make him that, then it limits him into his effectiveness and what he could potentially do as a player. So, and also, paying near max money for a spot-up shooter, that... And now, granted, you still also have other key pieces like Al Horford and shit like that, but also with Al Horford, you're paying $30+ million again for Al Horford, which just is wild to me because Al Horford is approaching mid-30s and he ain't going to be around for maybe another 5 years. He's probably going to be gone within 3 to 5 years. So right now, the Philadelphia 76ers are a clusterfuck of a mess that, really and truthfully speaking, again, this is why I'm really struggling to understand why Philly decided to do this. This just doesn't make sense to me. I think it is a terrible idea, and truth be told, I I really don't see how you can make this work with how Darryl Morey runs his offense, with how Philadelphia is structured. And even if you want to trade some players to go get some other pieces that could space out the floor, the salary cap situation for the Sixers is also pretty bad. So realistically and truthfully speaking, this is a bad move for Philly. But I'm curious to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Philly fans, also let me know what you think about this news, because I definitely want to hear from you, and I definitely want to talk about this with you guys, because this is something that is just, to me, I don't know. But anyways, guys, with that being said, I'm out. Peace.